People say to me, why is it that I sometimes feel like I'm my own worst enemy?
We hear that a lot.
I fight myself. I argue with myself. Well, if there's only one of you, how could you argue with yourself? You couldn't. There have to be different perspectives. I used to think of myself as an individual, and I thought, but then I realized I kind of got a group going on here that I need to
manage,
to understand and help them learn to work together.
Welcome back to another episode on the Fascinating Womanhood channel. I am Cherry Lynn, and I am so excited to be here with Dixie Andelin Forsyth and her husband, Dr. Robert Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
We're excited today to talk about upstairs, downstairs. So what does that term mean when you say upstairs and downstairs?
I think people don't often realize, first of all, I don't think they know much about the brain. We don't get any education about it growing up, really. But I think it's important to understand some basic things, like you have an upstairs and a downstairs brain. Seems kind of simple, but something that everybody should understand.
Some have asked me why there's a chapter like this suddenly in this book. It's because Bob is a neuropsychologist, which is a brain. He specializes in the brain, and he's studied it for so many years and talked about it. And it has helped me so much with understanding myself and how to get in a better space, how to understand him better. I just insisted that we have it in, and it's really condensed down. As far as research goes, this is coming from his own research.
Not just studying in books and reading and scientific materials, but actually seeing thousands and thousands of patients and people. The brain is so fascinating. I got to say, it's just amazing. And so when we've talked about this, Dixie has said, gee, this is really helpful to me. I need to understand me and other people better. And so maybe helping understand my brain is going to make it a difference, because people say to me, why is it that I sometimes feel like I'm my own worst enemy?
We hear that a lot.
I fight myself. I argue with myself. Well, if there's only one of you, how could you argue with yourself? You couldn't. There have to be different perspectives. I used to think of myself as an individual, and I thought, but then I realized I kind of got a group going on here that I need to
manage,
to understand and help them learn to work together. Ideally, that's the way it should be.
Because many people anyway, have heard about the right and left hemispheres, which is the upper part. So we thought we'd start with the downstairs.
Mm-hmm. Downstairs is a survival part of the brain, okay? Hunger, thirst, breathing, digestion, heartbeat, a lot of automatic stuff that you don't really have to think about much. But also downstairs, there's an interesting part of the downstairs brain called the amygdala. It's kind of like a brain guard dog. I like to put things into terms I can either visualize or help me understand just on a common everyday level. The guard dog is all about watching for danger. Is there anything that is stressful, uncomfortable, threatening?
That could be something as simple as I'm too hot or I'm too cold.
Sure, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. Or it could be danger, somebody threatening me, or loud noises, or all sensory information has to go through the downstairs before it can go upstairs. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of checking out. It's like a security guard that's checking anybody coming in. Any visitors coming have to be checked and scanned. And are we okay? Are we safe?
The problem is that it's the reason we use a dog is because, kind of like a dog, it tries to protect you. It means well, but you have to train it. It isn't very sophisticated, and it's only limitedly smart. So you can't just let it run wild and not be trained. Otherwise, it's gonna work against you, even though it's trying. So
is it fair to say that the downstairs part of your brain is, like, if you were to give it a label, it's more about negativity?
It's watching for problems. It's really focused on watching for problems. And some people, in a way, focus their whole life on, okay, where's the problem? What do I need to avoid? What do I need to be careful about? Oh, he said that. Oh, that must mean I'm in danger, or something to that effect.
In my book, we have a motto, a basic motto for each part of the brain, which is for the downstairs, if there was a motto for it, it would be, if it feels good, do it.
Okay, great. Okay.
Which is like, if you're hungry, you need to eat. If you're tired, you need to sleep.
If you're in danger, you need to run.
Yeah, and
or fight.
But human beings, unlike most animals, we have an ability, and we do this to override this for periods of time. That's how people can go without food and give it to somebody else. They can go without mothers, like we go without sleep, right? And we think it's going to kill us. Miraculously, it doesn't. But we can override the guard dog and say, it's okay, I'm going to override this for now. I'll take care of you later. Mm-hmm. And we have the ability to do that.
If you notice danger, there's body chemistry that's going to either get you ready to run or to fight. And there's actually a third one, and that's freeze. Sometimes you freeze. That's because, in a way, your body, you're like a vehicle. In a way, we're each vehicle, self-propelled vehicles. We take in energy and we make decisions and do things. But your body has chemistry that's sort of like gas and also brakes. That's the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So you got gas and brakes, and if they're on at the same time, you're going to freeze. There's some situations where you freeze. If a policeman pulls you over to the side of the road, your guard dog is going to say, run! But then it might say, fight! No, you can't do really either one of those. So you got gas and brakes on at the same time. So what you do is you just freeze, and you kind of, now maybe later, you may have a panic attack or something, but at the moment you freeze.
Well, I've found, and some of you may have found as well, that there's been times in my life when I have frozen and not understood it and then felt guilty later. I saw this happening and I didn't do anything. I just stood there. Mm-hmm. And you feel terrible, like, what kind of a person am I? I saw somebody being hurt and I just kind of froze.
Right.
You're not expecting it. That's what that is. So to try not to be too hard on yourself, it's something that happens often or sometimes in us, with some people more than others.
And it's kind of automatic.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, you can manage it or learn to manage it, but it takes some understanding what's going on and having some strategies. What do you do about this? How do you deal with it? Not just how do you understand it. Everybody has a survival part of the brain. Mm-hmm. It's automatic, and it's
because protected. They breathe and their heart beats.
Yeah. And the downstairs pretty much is always wanting to give you an answer for a problem, but it's going to tend to be an immediate answer. It's going to be more kind of almost more selfish and pleasure oriented, maybe food. If you're hungry, the answer to your stress, a person may have a stressful day at work and the first thing they want is hot fudge sundae or maybe a drink, or
after they just started their diet.
Yeah, after they just started their diet, so the downstairs is all about really survival, but you've got upstairs and downstairs, so the brain is constantly presenting you with a choice, downstairs or upstairs. Now, we haven't got to the upstairs yet. The upstairs job is to manage all of this. Now, sometimes the downstairs kind of gets out of control and a person is essentially living on a survival level, and they kind of block out everything else. But the upstairs, hopefully, as we get to that, we're going to help talk about how the upstairs manages the downstairs, hopefully. Upstairs, we talked about left and right hemispheres. This is somewhat of an oversimplification. I know Dixie doesn't like me saying these kind of things, but
it's just that we aren't scientists here.
Well, most of us right. This is a metaphorical way of understanding how the brain works. You've got a rational part of the brain that typically is more related to speech centers. You've got verbal centers mostly on the left side. I mean, with right-handed people and most left-handed people. So you've got speech centers, and that means this is more of a verbal, kind of logical, rational part of the brain. I call it the rational mind. Mm-hmm. And then you've got another part, the other side, that's more an intuitive part of the mind. So in a way, wherever these things are specifically, you have a rational and an intuitive mind. The rational mind is more, like I say, logical. You try to figure something out. You talk about it. You try to come to a conclusion. You put labels on things so you can talk about them, ideas, all that kind of thing. That's great left-sided stuff. The motto of that part of the brain, by the way, is I'm going to do what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, whether I feel like it or not. It's kind of a rational, grown-up approach, okay? The intuitive mind is so fascinating to me because it's more a creative or bigger picture part of the mind. I sometimes think of it as the listening post of the universe. I saw that sounds a little bit heavy there, but or maybe even possibly a spiritual antenna, because sometimes you're trying to figure out a problem, you can't figure it out, and you're going, I just don't. Oh, and then something pops in there. You get this idea from somewhere. Where does it come from?
Like a thought bubble with a light bulb in it. You sometimes
the light
see
bulb.
in cartoons.
You say the light bulb goes off, and you have this creative thought. And you say, hey, I just had an idea. What about this? And the logical mind goes, hey, that's a good idea. Let's try and figure this out. So they kind of work together. I mean, hopefully they work together, But in a way, you've got upstairs rational, upstairs intuitive or inspirational or creative, whatever you want to call it. And it's more nonverbal, by the way. So you've got the verbal processing and the nonverbal processing, and they can help you really come up with some great solutions. And there's a part of right at the front of the brain, prefrontal cortex, where it's kind of like the executive functions to manage all of this stuff. And it's a cooperative effort between the upstairs parts of the brain. But here's the thing, just think of it as a rational mind, as an intuitive mind, and then a survival mind. So you've kind of got three areas that are all working at the same time, all trying to help you and give you answers. They're all trying to help you.
And the motto of the intuitive or creative, I like to use that word too, is
I know in my heart
what I need to do.
What I need to do. I really know there's a part of me that knows the answer here. You kind of know.
It just feels right.
It feels right.
It feels right.
You know how sometimes you know something and you don't know how you know.
Yeah.
Have you for those of you who have ever watched a crime show and you see a detective, they get hunches. They get intuition about things. I have a feeling this, and so they'll follow that path.
Don't have the proof.
They don't have, and then they search for the proof.
The women that will say, my heart wants this and my head wants this.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
You hear that all the time. Yeah.
Right.
Another thing valuable that you've taught me is that the left side of your brain tries to take credit a lot for the intuitive side's ideas.
Einstein said something like this. I know he said it in another language, it's translated, but he said, intuitive mind is a gift. Mm-hmm. The rational mind is its servant. We live in a culture or a world that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. He said he never came up with any of his creative ideas logically or rationally. He said he came up with them intuitively, and then he figured them out and was able to
prove them logically.
Right, and with mathematics and so on.
That's really powerful. Yeah.
Now, the other part we wanted to mention was the differences between men and women's minds, which is one of the reasons this chapter got in this book.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so how does this all apply to Fascinating Womanhood? And I know you mentioned it at the beginning a little bit, but now that everyone hopefully has a better understanding of what this is, why are we here talking about this?
Well, this is very important because it helps men and women understand each other better, because often we don't. I mean, we just say, how does a woman think? And women are saying the same thing about men. What is going on in that mind? Well, here's the thing. And all men's brains are not the same, or women's brains the same. But basically, men are more wired front to back, which makes them more visual and action-oriented. Men are very target-oriented, and they don't like distractions. When they've got a target they want to hit, they don't want anything to distract them. Women are more wired side to side. This is a fascinating subject. So they kind of use both sides of their upstairs mind at the same time. In fact, for a woman, in a way, everything is connected to everything pretty much all the time. So everything is connected. Whereas for a guy, I want that target, I'm going to hit it and don't get in my way.
That's why sometimes you'll find a man, sometimes a woman, but more often a man, who, let's say there's a traumatic death in the family and he doesn't want to talk about it. He will not talk about it. Whereas a woman, her therapy more is to talk, because it's a way of getting out feelings. And then we don't understand men when they just, I don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, that's why we say men go into their cave. Men process more visually and in sort of a nonverbal way, in more of an action sort of way, whereas women process more verbally. So in a way, what this means is that a man is fine with a thought, but he doesn't like to connect it always to the emotions or the feelings related to it.
Because it's exhausting.
It's exhausting, and it's distracting. I think in a lot of men think, well, what's with all this drama? Why do we have to keep talking about all this stuff and all these feelings and everything? Is that, I knew a couple that had a serious loss in the family, a death, and he didn't want it brought up. He didn't want it. He knew he had the thought, but he didn't like to connect it to all the emotion. Whereas that's all she wanted to do was talk about it and process it and deal with feelings and all the ramifications of it, what it meant for everybody and for her. And, so there's a difference there, and men and women don't always understand it. Why won't he talk? I ask him how he feels, and he goes,
well, and then you get to this place where women, and I think this is a big problem in our society, is that women are expecting men to change and expecting men to think like women.
Right.
Their brains aren't wired the same way. And even though
they're saying, you have to talk.
Even though human beings, our brains are mostly similar, the differences that there are between us is enough that it's radical.
It makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference.
Well, we talk about left and right hemispheres. There's a communication network down here, and women are more connected. That's why we say they're more both hemisphere, because they're more connected. The communication networks between the hemispheres seem to be, there's more of them, more highways, so to speak.
What that means is feelings that are over on the right, that originate over on the right, have to go through that channel to the left to come out as words. We can access it easier and faster.
And put it into words.
And we get frustrated with men because we just say it. How do you feel? Just tell me. And it's because it's easier for us. So understanding a little bit of this, because we're not going to become scientists, but understanding just what's in the book is going to help you understand him. It's going to help you understand when he's hanging out in his downstairs more. And in another episode of this, we're going to talk about how when you're hanging out down there, how to get back up to the upper parts of your brain where there's more optimism, positive creativity, where people are happier.
Yeah, the more time you spend downstairs, usually the more selfish and pleasure-oriented your life is to cope. Mm-hmm. The more you spend upstairs, usually the better your life is. And that's probably what we'll need to talk about more in another.
Yes, we'll talk about that in another video. I think what we really wanted to do today is to talk about the definition, because we get so many questions about upstairs and downstairs, and it's very complex, as you can see. And understanding it is not only important in your relationship, I think you touched on this a little bit too, but it's also very important on yourself. And understanding, we talk so much in Fascinating Womanhood about you can't change another person, you can only change yourself. And understanding these things will aid you in that journey of changing yourself. Because if you're the woman that's watching this in your marriage and you're constantly living downstairs, that's going to affect your marriage, right?
Yes.
Also, if you're always thinking someone else is your problem and you got to fix them, you've missed the biggest challenge and the most important work that you can do, and that's in you, sorting yourself out. And then the other things tend to have a way of sorting themselves out if you start here.
Yes, and the understanding of upstairs, downstairs, and all these different parts of your brain is something that allows you to articulate what's going on in your life and other people's lives, rather than, I don't know why, I don't know what's wrong with him, or I don't know
what happened.
Yeah, but I just want things to change. It's like, well, this is basically a guidebook or textbook as to how to start making changes.
So read chapter 9. It's actually pretty good.
There's a lot more in it than what we're saying. And he tried to talk me into eliminating it because he said, it's too scientific. But I said, it is so helpful to me. It has to be in there.
No, it's very, very helpful. It can be difficult to understand if this is very new to you, but there are different tools that we have. We obviously have videos like this. We also have the student workbook that goes along with Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Woman, which is an excellent tool.
I'm really grateful because it has helped me so much. I know it can help you.
And I hope everyone out there has a full understanding. And we have a comment section down below, so definitely ask questions if you have any at all. We would love to answer them for you to help clarify. And then we will also be doing another video. How do you get up? How do you get down? What are all of the functions that associate with going up and down? What does that mean? And how can you learn how to manage all of that? Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for all of your advice.
Thank you, Cherry.
Bye.
Bye.